be ready when you're ready.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September 15th Newmarket School Board meeting. Apologies for being a few minutes late. We are working on a few technology issues on this end, but we think we're set now to get going. So, with that said, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. First item of business is a roll call vote on whether Andrew can attend remotely. So if we can go through the list, Phil? Nay. See you later, I wrote it down. Dan?
Aye.
Gary, aye. Amy?
Aye.
All right, excellent. The second item on the agenda is board comment and committee updates. Are any updates from anyone?
PD meets on Monday, so I
Okay,
haven't
cool.
had a meeting yet.
All right, thank you very much.
I mean, just as a comment, really appreciate the job the high school staff did in putting on the parent night last night.
Yes, last night.
It went really well. Everything looked great. It was great to see everybody, so thank you.
Great.
And CIP has had approximately 400 meetings in the last 3 weeks.
Each of 10 hours?
Probably the chair's fault. But yeah, so been through all the town stuff, and because the town has a specific charter deadline to get those done, so I'm gonna take a little bit of a break, get to the school stuff, to line it up with our budget timeline. So once we have our budget set date, we'll meet one more time.
Great. I'd originally asked to have the discussion for the superintendent's contract moved up on the agenda because a member was not going to be available for the entire meeting. That has changed. Is it okay with the board if we move that down to the regular discussion items?
Yep.
So we can get the presentations done?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right. With that, student representative report. Thank you, Bella.
First off, a huge congratulations to our girls varsity soccer team who absolutely crushed it at their game last Tuesday against Sanborn. You can catch them next tomorrow at 4 o'clock for a home game against Somersworth. And of course, good luck to our boys varsity soccer team who will be playing against Sanborn at 6 o'clock tonight. So those of you listening at home, if you leave now, you might be able to catch the game. Finally, our environmental team, Net Zero, had their first official meeting today, and they're planning a community roadside cleanup for October 25th. So thank you so much to them for keeping our community nice and environmentally friendly. That'll be it for me this week. But thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Lola. All right, next we have superintendent report.
Well, I do want to start with just saying congratulations to Lila. And Principal Corman sent out an email today. Lila is a National Merit Scholar finalist. So
Nice.
Wow, congratulations.
Out of hundreds of thousands, I don't know the exact number, there are 16,000 students that have been named, and she's one of them nationally. So it just speaks so well of Lila, and it also speaks well of the Newmarket schools. So congratulations. That's really great. Okay, so I have a number of things I wanted to report on today. First off, I wanted to just do a quick report out. I'm going to call it a COVID update, but it really isn't that much to say, which is good. We have had school going on almost 3 weeks, and COVID has not reared its ugly head at all in a way that's impacted us. You may have noticed on our website we've maintained our COVID tracker. Numbers are very low. Things are really good, and I have to tell you, in fact, the conversations with Dan about the open house last night, just the general feeling of happiness with normal world. I cannot tell you how nice it is to walk into a school and see happy faces, talk to people, see kids at lunch, all of those things. So from that perspective, I just wanted to say we're in a really good place. But I also just wanted to acknowledge that we continue to pay very close attention to the data related to that, and obviously, if there's a need to make adjustments, we'll talk to you. But things are going fabulously well, and I thank everybody for embracing normal as a thing. So congratulations to the school on that. So, so that's one. Shifting topics, I will at a later date do a more thorough presentation on this, but I've had a lot of people, believe it or not, it's only September 15th, but a lot of people want to know what my philosophy is on snow days. And I find it interesting, we're already, like the minute we get school started, they want to know what's the deal here. And I just wanted to just give a couple of just quick thoughts on that, and then obviously I'll talk more later. My personal feeling is I'm a fan of the traditional snow day concept, not to the extent that it messes up the school calendar, but I do believe that when it snows and it's not safe to be on the roads, people should stay home, and I think that's important. Then there's the question of what does that mean to the school day. With the exception of when things are particularly disrupted and the technology can be used to maintain some continuity, I'm a fan of it for that purpose. I'm not a fan personally of using it as a substitute for in-person learning. I do believe that they're not equivalents. There's a lot of values that can be had through virtual learning, and we can use it to leverage learning, but that's my belief, and certainly we can talk about it more. We've got a long way until snow days, but I just wanted to put that out there for people to think about. A lot of people ask me about blizzard bags and all those kind of concepts, and at least for the first few of the few weather incidents that we might encounter, I would be inclined to just, it would be a snow day from my perspective. That would be how I would approach it. But we can talk about that more if I get any pushback on that, but I just wanted to put that out there. Next, I did want to mention something, speaking of school calendars. We did have, we discovered a mistake on our website last week. The school calendar that was published, was wrong. It had an incorrect day in October as a teacher professional day, which was not correct. It had October 28th, and that is not a teacher professional day, so please know that. And we have not been planning for that at all. Apparently, when the calendar discussions took place last spring, there were multiple variations of the calendar kind of batted around, and somehow the wrong one got put on our website. And I apologize for that, and I will put out information to the community letting them know that. But please know that that was an error. There is no, October 28th is a normal learning day for kids to come to school. That's what it always had been intended to, and unfortunately there was an erroneous calendar that was expressing something different. Okay. Questions, thoughts on that? No?
No.
Okay. All right, so the big thing I wanted to talk about tonight is, and actually it ties into the capital improvement committee chair's work that he's been talking about, is capital projects for the district. You have in your packet the materials that the school district submitted to the capital improvement committee for capital projects, and I wanted to take a minute to talk about them and just kind of run through them. Basically, first thing I think is important to note is this community has invested tremendously in our schools, and as a result we have two incredibly well maintained and renovated and like really top quality school facilities. So fortunately, because of that, our capital needs are relatively few. But there are 6 projects that we are kind of submitting to the capital improvement committee to take a look at, to just let them know what our work is. Internally, it's important to note that we have a capital improvement committee within the district, and we are working with Dave Riley, who's here tonight. Hey, Dave, thanks for being here. To develop sort of a 10-year look at our capital needs, so we can really start to anticipate what our needs are long term and map those things out. That being said, the 6 projects that were submitted are things that two of the projects are actually already in the works. They're actually happening, and we just want to follow through on their completion. One project is the window replacement and electrical upgrades at the elementary school. The electrical upgrades are entirely done. Windows are about half done, right, Dave? Yeah, half done?
No, windows, the replacing of the windows at the elementary school, we have not started.
Okay.
During the expansion, many windows replaced. This project is replacing the remaining.
Okay, so next, why don't you come to the mic there so you can
Okay,
fill in
thank
as
you.
I make mistakes. So anyway, that's one project that's well in the works. It's already been targeted, and that is something that we will continue to move forward on. A second project that is ongoing and will be finished next summer is the flooring project at the elementary school. You want
Yes.
to jump in and say a few words about that one?
We had a number of rooms that had carpeted floors. carpeting in elementary school. I just don't agree with it. Traps allergens. It's much harder to keep clean. We have 3 classrooms currently that still have carpeting, so that will be one of next summer's projects, is to remove that. Put the VCT tile down that we have in the rest of the school. We're matching the tiling and the patterns for the rest of the school, so it'll look like the rest of the classrooms in the school.
So those are the 2 that are already in the works that are being done. There are 2 projects that are sort of like, I would put them in the category of a wish list, and they might actually be more of a distant wish list, just because they do involve some fairly large scale thing. One is a multi-field athletic turf field space, which you know, again, it's something that certainly when you talk to anybody involved in recreation in a town, there's no question there's value in having additional field space, and certainly in the early spring and during some of the wetter days in the fall, our fields are hard to play on, and a turf field would help to rectify that. However, we recognize that is probably a project that is for some time down the road. It's something to kind of put on the radar is potentially something that would be worthwhile. I would comment that I've had some conversations with the town manager as well as the Newmarket Rec leadership, and I think everybody is in agreement. It would be great to have something like that. It's just a question of how do you factor it in and how do you make it happen. So anyway, that's one project that, again, is on that sort of wish list category. The other one, which actually kind of goes hand in hand if we were to pursue a field project, is the expansion of parking out next to the annex over there in front of the junior senior high. So there's a project to expand parking, and certainly at certain peak times when things are going on, parking can be a real challenge over there, and so it's certainly something to be considered. Again, those 2 projects are probably in the category of wishes, not necessarily immediate needs, but it's something, I think it's worthy of kind of putting on people's radar as something that might be needed. The 2 projects that I think, that I'm hoping that we can have some conversation about tonight, later on when there are some action items, is a couple of projects that have been actively being talked about and worked on in the community for quite some time, from what I can gather. And I think we've come up with some plans to allow us to be able to make these things happen, and I'm actually kind of excited about that, the prospect of that. One of those projects is the courtyard at the junior senior high. There's been a lot of conversation around the courtyard project, but one of the things that, for a variety of reasons, it has been left as a topic of discussion, and just there hasn't been a determination made on what needs to be done with it. It's important to note that there is money that actually could fund the project that is left over from the bond that we took to renovate the junior senior high and the elementary school, and so the funds are there to do it. I think what's holding us back is just developing a plan and then saying, okay, let's do that plan. And so I think we're very ready for that. I don't know, did you want to chime in with any thoughts on the courtyard project, Dave? I know you are very aware of it.
Oh, am I aware of it? Yes. We have the original plan that was designed by the architects who did the expansion, which includes a small amphitheater with the stage butting against the wall where the doors are to the event hallway, a granite retaining wall that would also be seats for that small amphitheater. I'm very excited for some public speaking, some jazz concerts, some Shakespeare in the courtyard. And then the back half, because there is an elevation drop, we require that retaining wall. The back half would be an outdoor classroom, and I think it would just be a fantastic opportunity and an excellent use for that space. I've discussed it with the principal of the high school, and he agrees those would be 2 excellent uses. I can't really design a space until I know what it's going to be used for. He agrees those would be excellent uses for that space, so I'm very excited to move forward on that project.
Yeah, so to move forward on it would obviously involve developing some kind of a site-based committee that would really review those things, work with an architect, figure out exactly what the design was going to be and move it. But I think the important message is I think the funding for it already exists. It's just a matter of making decisions to make it happen. So that's one project that I want to talk about moving fairly quickly on, potentially having the work done next summer, assuming we can arrange that. Question, do you have a question, Andrew? No?
Oh, no.
No, okay, all right.
I may interrupt you just for a second. Jana will correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe those funds can only be used for a project that within the school, within the original construction, which would include the courtyard.
Right.
Yeah.
The remaining bond funds, and just so that you know, we have more in the bond fund than I've reflected on this sheet, because all interest earned on the bond fund has to be returned to the taxpayers. We can't use it for the project. So part of the money will go back, but the balance of the actual bond fund has to be expended for the purpose originally approved by the voters. So this was a project that was considered as part of that large project. I believe there were some decisions made partway through the project, you know, for value engineering, where they kind of pulled some things back, but it was actually discussed, and there was, you know, as Dave alluded, there was a design done. It may not be our final design, but, you know, it definitely was part of the project, so yes.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted the board to know that we couldn't take that money and say,
Do
use
something
it for
else.
busing
Right.
or, you know,
Right,
some other
right.
project, so
And
it is
the
earmarked.
and the impact fees too, Gary, that
Yeah.
they would work hand in hand with that, because again, those are for expansion of spaces. They're a limited thing too, so they would fit nicely in that bucket.
Thank you so
Janet,
much.
I have a question. So is it 350,000 that we have for that?
It's a very rough estimate, Amy, because
Okay.
we haven't nailed down a design. We really need to get somebody out there to
Okay.
redesign it. So we kind of went based off the architect's kind of per square foot estimate, but it could
Okay.
go up or down depending on what the district chooses to put in that space.
Okay, because this picture clearly does not.
No,
That's
no.
not.
That's our current courtyard,
know.
yeah. No.
Actually, we had quite a discussion at the Capital Improvement Committee about this template, and we have to put a picture in, and it's like, you know,
Like
so you actually have a conceptual design.
I'd be happy to know that the Capital Improvement Committee, of like the larger one, is going to spend between now and next spring, like reworking the process so that something a little stronger than
Okay,
this.
well, thank you, that's very kind. So anyway, so clearly the courtyard is one of those high visibility but major return projects that if we just move on it, I think it would be a really positive thing. So and optimistically, it would be great to be in a position where that work could be done next summer, and by this next school year, there would be a courtyard available for use. So that would be one project. And the other one, which this is one I'm very excited about, and I have to commend Jana for her work on this one. The playground over at the elementary school. There has been a lot of talk over the years about trying to improve the playground, make it add elements to it, and so forth. And one of the challenges with particularly for school facilities or any public facilities, is you have to be aware of ADA compliance, and there's a lot of issues that go into designing a playground that make it challenging to do it piecemeal. And so one of the challenges last year, I think there was a group of, in fact, our PTA has been just amazing in their efforts. In fact, Sean Pine and I are going to the elementary school PTA next week to talk with them about playground-related issues. But they're very strong advocates of it, and they have actually raised $50,000 towards improvements on the playground. And then on top of that, as a community, over the last 3 budget cycles, there's been $50,000 each year placed in a trust fund specifically for that purpose. So really, we were left with, okay, how can we? The total cost of the project is somewhere between $550,000, $600,000. Where does the remainder of that money comes from? And Jana had the wonderful idea of, well, there was another community, and actually, Jana, what was the other community that actually did this?
It was I believe Goffstown,
Yeah.
but it was over. I heard of it at a meeting, and I followed the man out to his car.
So in a good way,
There are police officers behind, so we should.
But what I'm saying, what the Goffstown did is they were able to leverage ESSER funds to finish the project. And so what Jana was able to do through doing some legwork and the research and submitting a conceptual design, we were able to get conceptual approval to use ESSER funds to make up the balance of this. So at this point, we have this sort of tentative conceptual approval, so we know it's an ESSER doable project. We would then just be able to utilize some portion of our ESSER funds to be able to do that, and we feel very confident that we can achieve that. So this is another project that I think could be done. I know Dave's going to have a busy summer next year with windows at the elementary, but this could be done next summer as well. So we could right away just say, okay, these things are going to happen, and I can't say enough how, I said this to Dave at one of our leadership meetings last week. One of the things that always impresses me about him is just how quickly he's on top of things and so forth. And his philosophy is that, our facilities are a reflection on us as a school, and the quality to which we maintain our facilities speaks to how good of stewards we are of the taxpayers' money. And I think getting all of our facilities to the level that we want them to be is a very powerful message to the community. So I'm excited at those two in particular, the courtyard and the playground, as being things that we can move on fairly quickly. It doesn't involve additional funds coming from taxpayers. It's just simply us saying that this is what we want to do, and then these two wonderful people can do some of the legwork to make that happen. So those are the projects. And later in the meeting, I know we have a potential discussion of an action regarding the approval of us moving forward with the courtyard and the playground. And I would certainly, I look forward to that conversation. Dave, any final thoughts you want to add to capital improvements?
No, I'm just excited to do this. I really am incredibly excited to do this. These are great projects. And
Should we ask questions now or later?
Yeah, go ahead. Ask
So,
questions.
just real quick, and it might be a good question. So it's awesome that we're pulling fund, like grants and ESSER and whatnot. Are there monies that would have to come out of our capital reserve balance in order to finance these?
There potentially may be monies that would come out of the courtyard from capital reserve, but if the board remembers, a few years back, we put $60,000 for furniture into a capital reserve for COVID-related expenditures we couldn't make for planned furniture. We haven't touched that yet. So what I was thinking is we might be able to leverage that money for the structural, for furnishing the courtyard. And when we're looking at the 350, I'm kind of including what we would need to make the space functional for students. So I'm thinking that amount has already been earmarked for a similar purpose. So there would be some.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
So the amount we would be drawing from a capital reserve balance, not adding to our budget or request for more capital reserve funds.
Correct. The intent is that we wouldn't be raising any new taxation for this. We wouldn't be drawing from our existing budget, that the monies that we have in hand in these various buckets can be leveraged to do these projects. And the ESSER funding, I also want to toss a word out to Patty, because she manages that grant, so she's going to be a wizard rearranging and finding that money in the grant now that we have the conceptual approval. So it really is going to take a village to kind of pull all the resources together and hopefully pull this off for the community without raising taxes or impacting. So we're really excited about it.
Thank you for your work on that.
Thank you,
Glad
Jan.
I know this is farther down the road, but the turf field we're considering, so that would be between the parking lot and the river, over on the other side of the road from the high
the
school?
Perkins Annex building there is beyond that parking lot there.
On the parking lot.
Not
Beyond.
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 Beyond. Oh, okay, yeah.
Beyond,
hovering
beyond.
above.
To be very clear, though, there has been no site work done. There's been where it's a speculation. This was a project that was already in the queue, if you will, as being something to consider. But if we were ever to go there, we would definitely have to have a survey done and really determine, I've heard things about wetlands and all those kind of things. So there's a lot of things to resolve before it's not site ready.
Yeah, that was my first question. I thought there was wetlands issues when you got much beyond
Yeah,
where we
there
did
was-
the parking lot.
Things that are passed down between board members. There was a rumor that we can't do any additional construction or expansion over there because the wetland versus upland area used up. Right, so even for the parking lot expansion, we'd have to
Right.
do some investigation.
So sort of related question then, is there any logic to the idea of just taking the existing soccer field and converting that to a turf field,
I
just
think
partnering with the town and
The
the rec?
problem is the baseball field overlaps, so I think you would run into some
Yeah, actually. yeah.
oddities.
I mean, obviously it gets significantly more complicated. I think what is more, again, this is on a wish list. Not
Yeah,
a-
this
a
is
to-do
this is
list.
$1 million plus, not going to happen. Sort of.
Right,
Let's be
so-
honest, so.
So I would envision before we did anything, there would be probably a community-based committee with people from the rec department, the town, just kind of looking at what are all our options, take a look at it, and just decide what our needs are long-term before we make any commitment to a project.
Yeah. It is a good idea. That the current soccer field, if it's at all damp out, it tears the crap out of the grass
Yeah.
playing soccer on that. So
Yeah, we're in a drought, and that's the only field in in the entire state that is moist. So it's a bit strange.
All right, thanks.
Sorry, can I just add one more thing just for the people at home?
Sure.
That, like, because it wasn't mentioned, impact fees are also paying for the courtyard, and impact fees, like for those that don't know impact fees, that developers pay impact fees because it like might impact the school and like water and sewer as well. And when they build developments, those turn into a pumpkin after so many years, right? So like if we don't use them like by a certain time, they go away. So like I think it's fantastic that we're leveraging those to finance it as well.
And they're probably not huge because we did use them for the school
Like
originally.
65K or something.
Oh, was there already?
Yeah.
Wow.
I get a report just today.
Oh my
I think.
goodness. That's
Every
a
time
lot.
you see a development go up, you're like,
I
that's money
know.
for the schools, right?
Right there. Yeah.
All right, I just have one more thing, and this doesn't involve any decision making, but I just wanted to mention this to the board as something to be aware of and maybe get a little bit of reaction. I had a community member reach out to me. It's a family that they have a senior at Newmarket High School. They have just put their house on the market, and they are concerned if we would allow their child to finish at Newmarket High School. Again, there's nothing to decide right now because the house hasn't been sold and they haven't established where their next residence is. But I did tell the family that I would bring it up with the board just to gauge your reaction. My experience in my previous district was typically if a senior was already at our school after a certain point in the year, typically we would allow them to finish if that were the case. And I guess I just get a sense if that's where this board is at.
Generally speaking, that's what we've done. So
Okay.
I'm sure.
So in the event this situation does present itself, because again, it's a lot of ifs here, but this will allow me to go back to the family and say, okay, this is the general, but when you have a specific sale date and you have a residence, let's talk, and then we can have a specific decision. Okay. All right, that's all I have.
That was my public correspondence item, so thank you for stealing the thunder on that. Thank you very much for the report, and Janet and Dave, thank you very much for being here to help with the report. Next up, we have fourth quarter financials, fiscal year 22, with someone who is rarely at the school board meetings, Janet Mellon.
I know. Thank you guys so much for your time. So this is our fourth quarter financial reports. So this is actually for last school year that ended June 30th. So it's similar format to what we have. I kind of done a pretty high level overview of expenditures and revenues, and then kind of talked a little bit about what everybody really cares about, which is the fund balance to reduce taxes, and then kind of a down the road preview coming attractions. So I'll start off with the expenditures. If you have anything, just raise your hand or give me a flag and I'll be happy to answer. So basically, we ended the year. It was not a surprise to any of us. We had additional money in salaries and benefits. We talked about that throughout the year. It had to do with hiring challenges we've faced as a result of COVID. We finished the year in the operations side in the negative because to offset our staffing difficulties, we had to bring on contracted services that were not previously budgeted as contracted services. So you'll see an over expenditure in that area and a corresponding positive variance in the salaries and benefits. So as we came into the end of the year, the sum total of those things, salaries and benefits, were roughly about $950,000 unexpended. We overspent operations by about $380,000. If you recall, from at the end of the year, we asked the board to vote to encumber obligations that are already encumbered in a purchase order for things that are ongoing. Usually these things pertain to work that's being done over the summer, for which we have funding. But when the board votes to encumber those funds, if we cannot or don't expend that money for the specific purpose that we asked you to encumber it for, the money rests in the budget and it gets returned as part of the fund balance. So we had about $22,000. Some projects came in under budget ultimately, so we return that as part of our unexpended expenditure balance. So net total was about $604,132 of unexpended expenditure budget, which is a mouthful. The other component, the chief component that goes into our fund balance that we turn back is obviously the revenue side. So this was a very non-conventional year as far as revenues. Usually as school districts, we're not like a business where we have income that comes in that we don't know about or that flows up and down. Usually we know what our funding is. We know what we're getting from the state. We have a pretty good idea of how our revenues come in. COVID kind of turned everything right on its ear for the last couple of years, but in this year, it was kind of it was a good opportunity for us. So our local revenues were lower by $245,000, but a chief component of that is the fact that we weren't selling meals at school because we were giving away free meals due to the waiver. So you'll see an increase in the state revenues, the state and federal revenues section accordingly because all the meals were deemed free meals, so we received a reimbursement from there. So again, some of the levers are once down and the others up. The other exciting, well, I think exciting revenue opportunity this year came from FEMA and from E-rate. So E-rate is something that Jason Carey works incredibly hard on. It's a great program to provide technology to schools and libraries. And every year there's some pretty tight strictures there. And he works with a consultant to make sure that we can bring every dime out of every nickel to benefit the district. So every year we plan some projects, we expend the money, and then we receive a reimbursement, but sometimes those reimbursements don't necessarily align nicely with our fiscal year. So here you see we brought in some additional E-rate monies and the details at the end. The FEMA monies were something that we worked really hard on, and again, I think I've talked to you about the effort that went into that on behalf of a whole lot of people's time and effort. And we were able to work with FEMA to leverage an opportunity to kind of find the right way to what kind of expenditures that we could seek reimbursement on to get about $415,000 worth of revenue that we did not anticipate. We initially had predicted that was going to be a little higher, but there were some changes to the programs during the year, and the last quarter of the year we weren't able to recoup as much as we had anticipated, but still all of those dollars go right back into the budget. They were expenditures that you see reflected in our expenditures, but we did receive a revenue back that goes right back to help offset tax rate at the end of the year. So kind of to go through that, the revenues and the expenditures go together, and then there are some accounting adjustments that make everybody glaze over. Some might find them exciting, but most don't. That are just part of when we have several funds in our district. So at the end of the year, we have to present a blended financial statement of all of those funds. So there are just adjustments that the accountants make to move monies and transfers from one fund to the other. It doesn't mean we have any more cash or any more money. It's just the way that it's presented in according with generally accepted accounting principles. So when you take those revenues, those expenditures, the unexpended encumbrances, and some auditing adjustments, the total balance of appropriations for our unexpended expenditures in the general fund and all funds, it was $716,000. Then from that, you take the excess revenues. We had $648,700 in extra revenues. We take out of that the amounts you voted this year to encumber into the next year. And then there are a couple more auditing adjustments. And basically, we get down to the big number that everybody looks for, which is $1,096,700. This is after we've had our financial audit. So while I suppose you could say anything is possible, it is highly unlikely that that number is going to change between now and tax rate setting. So that would be the number that we would be sending back to the taxpayers. And again, it's a big number. And without the context, you might say, well, why did you ask for as much budget as you did if you're going to return this much? But keep in mind, a big chunk of that is actually unanticipated revenues that we work really hard to bring in. So it's actually a good thing that we're returning that money. So something to be proud of. The other highlight this year, and again, 100% due to COVID, is the food service fund, which ended the year not in a negative. like it historically has, but actually with a positive balance. So $131,000 to the good this year, and that is 100% due to the waivers that were in place to reimburse us for student meals for all students, and some other service waivers that were the USDA did. I want to caution the board and anyone listening that this is probably not going to be a repeatable phenomenon because those waivers have expired. And I'll take a moment to plug, if anybody hasn't filled out their free and reduced hot lunch form, please hop right on that or give me a call or go to the website. I'll be happy to send one out to you. But the good part is that $131,000, we can't use it to offset taxes, but it is retained in that the food service fund. So should we have a negative balance in a future year, we can use that to offset that negative balance to kind of level things out for a few more years. So that's a really, really exciting thing. And we're in the process of budgeting for next year based on our expenditures. And so we hope to be able to kind of look at this as from a high level view and figure out where we need to be as far as that goes. So the outlook for food service, as I said, I wouldn't expect a repeat of this year. We do hope that we are going to be able to contain costs, and we are working really hard to invigorate our offerings and encourage student participation, helping families out with the free and reduced applications if they need that. But going forward, I think we're going to see more of what is a typical year for Newmarket as far as revenues and expenditures. Just a reminder, we've talked about it before this year. There was a one-time state retirement contribution that was approved by the legislature in April of 2022. So basically, it's going to result in a one-time 7.5% contribution from the state to offset employer district expenditures for retirement for our teachers, only for the teacher group. It also is for fire and police. Obviously, we don't do that. So that'll be a nice, an unexpected, pleasant surprise. But I just again want to caution: it's a one-time revenue that will come in. So even without doing anything, the following year, you can expect an automatic increase in what we have to raise and appropriate because those funds won't be coming in unless they're codified in permanent legislation. So I know that there are some movements to try and do that, but I don't know where that will ultimately land. So for fiscal year 23, we should see a reduction in our New Hampshire retirement expenditures because we budgeted at the full amount. Way down the road, as we start to budget, New Hampshire retirement has, for the first time in my personal recollection, actually reduced employer contribution rates for 2024 and 25. So as we're budgeting, our expected rate of contribution will go down. It won't be in this fiscal year, but it'll be in our next budget year. And then the final piece I wanted to share with you is Dave and I and the whole team actually have been working really hard to try and leverage any opportunity for funding that's presented itself. So I've been here before talking to you about the seed grant. We still haven't heard if we've gotten that. That's only a one award for $150,000. It's supposed to be coming out any time now, and I certainly will let you know about that. But I am pleased to announce that we applied for 4 different projects under the New Hampshire SAFE grants, which were security. There's $13 million that the state made available to schools just for security-related issues. And we had 4 projects. We received notification this week. 2 of them have been approved. So we know we're going to be able to move forward on those 2. We're waiting for guidance on the state. They have to tell us how we can access that money. So before we can start the project, we kind of have to wait for that. And then we have 2 more that will be considered in the next batch, which they figure it's going to be in mid-October. And while we may not get all of them, we would love it if we could get any of them. So each school is eligible for a maximum of $100,000 from this grant, and we've tried to peg it pretty close to that number for these projects. We have some pretty exciting things we'd like to do with it. Because they're security related, I don't want to go into too much detail about what the types of things are that we're looking at, but I certainly will let you know the award when and if it comes through. And that's kind of the back of the reports. I should say for anybody at home, all of this information is up on our website in the board materials, and you can look at the details of the financials if you wish. And I guess at this point, I'll open it up to the board for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Gina, and everyone. I mean, for not only the comprehensive report, but all the work you've done last year and everyone else did to get these retained funds. And unfortunately, a lot of it was because we couldn't employ people, but we wanted to employ. And I just wanted to reiterate, I harp on it every year about the free and reduced forms as well. It's the multiplying effect that it creates in federal grants by filling that one form out is significant to the district, and we really need to encourage everyone to do that. And I also just wanted to, again, like I have the last 2 years, remind people that, yeah, the excess funding is great to have back to the taxpayers, but it really is a very unique thing that we shouldn't expect. And
Right. And it's obviously not something that is a goal for us, but again, this year, had we not had those anticipated revenues, I think we would have hit more in line with what the district's done in the past, but those unanticipated revenues kind of put us right where we were, last year. It was like $1.5 million last year, I think.
yeah, and the year before was, so I think we're like at 3.5 over the last
Yeah.
3 years.
Yeah.
And that's all just because of the hard work people like you, and so it's
Yeah.
appreciated. I know the taxpayers
Thank you.
appreciate it. Anyone have any questions?
I would just say $1 million is a lot of money, but it's 4% of the larger budget. So coming within 4% of a budget, like when
Pretty
you
good.
frame it that way, is not like necessarily like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it is like effectively $1 off the tax rate for the
Yeah.
community, which is also great.
And I don't think people realize that when, you see it when we vote, but you don't necessarily realize the savings that's being pushed back to you, so.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, how does that, so the way this kind of ends up manifest, because this year's tax rate was lowered by some amount of fund balance that we carried forward, and now we have this $1 million that impacts next year. How much did we return for this year's tax rate?
I think it was about $1.5 million.
1.5,
Yeah, it was
about.
Similar.
Okay,
Just the
so,
school, I don't know what the concrete is.
all right, yeah, it's all we can control.
Yeah.
All right, so
So
I'm
I'll-
just trying to get my head around the general, so if we knocked it down by $1.5 million this year, we're knocking it down for $1 million next year. We're actually, I mean, not that anybody hasn't done great work, but in a sense, we're almost 500,000 unfavorable in terms of the impact on the tax rate. Just to keep everybody's expectations
Right.
correct.
Yeah, absolutely,
It's-
yeah.
Yeah, but had it been level, it would have been like 2.5 or 1.5
Yeah,
million.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm,
Yeah.
it's fantastic news, but if somebody's expecting to see the tax rate go down by $1, I just want to make
Yeah,
sure everybody's got the right
tax
thing in
rates
their
is-
head.
Yeah, it's, as they collected it, they just reduced the amount they're collecting, and people
Right.
probably just didn't realize. Exactly, yep.
And it does create a challenge in the budgets that are following, where that you don't have that. So you will, if you maintain the same level of spending without $1 million, you will see a spike, even though
Technically, yeah.
you're not spending anything more. So I
Yeah.
think we need to be very careful how we manage.
Absolutely.
And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but just another reminder, the state has played a little bit with our adequacy aid in this coming cycle. So they approved $100 million that they said they were giving back to local municipalities for tax relief, and they were going to take it off the statewide tax that normally needs to get raised, which is great, but we have to raise that statewide tax here in Newmarket. It's part of what we do. So it's again another one of those one-time reductions, right? So it helps us out in the short term, but automatically without doing anything, if they take that relief away in a future year, and it looks like that may happen, automatically what we have to raise and appropriate, even keeping things level, looks like a spike. So for the next couple years, we're going to have to just really, work with our budget and work with our legislature, and hopefully everything that that comes our way will be able to weather and all of those things. Did it die on me? Oh, sure. A little.
Thank you again, Jana.
All
Really
right.
appreciate it. Any other questions, comments? No? Awesome.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up, we're fortunate to have our elementary, middle school, and high school resource officers here, Officer McFadden and Officer Gott, as well as Chief Jordan here to presumably be moral support or to grade their presentation skills. I don't know which.
Adult supervision.
Yeah, or adult supervision
While
could
they
be.
make their way to the podium, I do want to just take a minute to just say how wonderful it has been to work with the Newmarket Police Department. It's just, we have a great partnership, and I really do appreciate that. And we're so fortunate. I mean, I don't think people in this community realize how lucky we are to have a resource officer at each school. Rich and Gary are fantastic. The work that was done with Homeland Security, it wouldn't have been as successful without the work that these two gentlemen did. So with that said, thank you guys for being here, and thank you for staying a little late. I appreciate you being here.
No problem.
Thank you for having us. To start,
Rock, paper, scissors.
we're looking at 3 bullet points we wanted to talk about. Number 1 is our training, what we've been doing to improve our own abilities and the abilities of the police department when it comes to safety and security within our schools. Since I've been here in December, I've become certified through Texas State University as an instructor for civilian response to active attack events. And I've been able to train with both schools in the department as well. We've actually had our officers in the building going through the latest tactics and things like that, clearing halls, checking buildings, to make sure we are at best practice when it comes to these type of emergency events. We want to keep our skills sharp as well. It's the best service we can provide to the citizens and students and staff of our schools. We were fortunate enough to attend a 4-day tactical training called a Tactical School Resource Officer for 4 days in Somersworth. Again, we spent some classroom hours on day 1, learning all of the latest studies, statistics, information we need to do our jobs effectively, and then it was all tactical, involving our weapons, and then in a school building in Somersworth, a private school, going through the building, learning how to work individual responders, 2-person teams, 3-person teams, things like that, to make us better at what we do, more effective. And that is also some of the things that we brought back to our department when we were working in our schools just a few short weeks ago. Emergency operation plans, that's something we work on all the time. In our building, way things have changed from last year to this year, I spend more time checking our exterior perimeter and our doors to make sure they're locked at all points. Reinforcing with staff and students, always make sure we're locking the doors, shutting them tightly behind us, using our main entrance and exit points only, so we don't leave anything inadvertently open or ajar. And the other thing is we have the computer systems and cameras all over the building. I spend a lot more time watching our exterior perimeter as well, not just the students in the halls and things that go on there. That's best practice. We pay attention to what's outside of the building as well as what's happening within the building. Lastly, for me, an education piece, I brought the 7th grade DARE program called Keeping It Real. It's an education piece for our 7th grade students in their health curriculum. It's about decision making, and REAL is an acronym for refuse, explain, avoid, and leave. If they find themselves headed for a bad decision or in a bad situation, just strategies they have to get out of those situations. So those are quick updates on safety and security and training, and what we're doing in an education piece in my school. Anyway,
So
you're up here.
my job's a little bit different than Officer McFadden's because the littler kids, I don't do a lot of typical police stuff there, right? I'll handle DCYF reports that come in or kids that in need, but I'm more of a mentor for some of our kids that may not have positive male role models. I'll help out the counseling team a lot with communication where we may have interactions with families in town previous nights, and kids will be coming in with certain behavioral issues, and I'll be able to advise them, you know, this kid is being normal, something happened at home, right? So I try to get into the classrooms as much as I can. I'm a little bit of chaos when I get involved with the kids because I love Mr. Allen is laughing because he's seen it in action, and I explain to kids and parents that I don't do discipline at the elementary school. That's not my job. My job is to make sure kids are safe, and it's a full concept of what safe is. That's the building safe and hard, like Officer McFadden just talked about. We do the same things at the elementary school, and it's also safe in terms of safe language because kids don't know what they're saying. So sometimes Mr. Pine will call me in, and I'll have conversations about what's safe behavior in the school and what's safe for kids to do, all the while explaining they're not in trouble with me because I don't get kids in trouble. That's not my job. And then also building relationships with the kids that they can come to me if they're unsafe outside of school, right? Because they may be in an environment at home that is not as conducive for them to be honest, or maybe it's something actually in the household that they need someone they can reach to. And I think the bonds that I've created in the last year that I've been there have been very strong. I mean, I went to see Officer McFadden for a case yesterday, and all the sixth graders that saw me were like losing their mind. And I think Rich felt a little sad that they don't respond in the same manner. But that
Maybe you
goes
can
back
do some,
to,
visits down to the elementary school and build some bonds there.
Officer McFadden teaches DARE, and I teach a very similar program called LEAD, and it was with my fifth graders. So I came up with a plan with the fifth grade team last year for me to go in and spend time in class before I actually taught them. So I'd go in every day and I'd read a book to them and do questions and answers, and they'd ask me about my gear, or my dog, or my family or whatever, and just so I could get that excitement and a little bit of Officer God chaos out of the way, so when I had to teach them what I needed to teach them, they could focus better. So I think I've made a lot of grounds, because that was my first year as a school resource officer, where Officer McFadden had some experience at his last department, and this was a new assignment for me. So I have found it very rewarding, and with the information we learned through our training this summer, I think our schools are going to be a lot safer. But I really want to thank Mr. Riley, because he has been instrumental. If I have an issue with anything to do with security at the school, it is handled, like Mr. Allen said, immediately, and he's been really awesome. So.
And I concur with that, as well as support from the police department. I've been here since December, and have a lot of support in the community. Makes our jobs easier.
Right, we're only there because you all want us there. So that's a really big thing for us. So.
But I think it also speaks to the type of people you both are. You're very approachable. Staff are very comfortable talking with you. I think you recognize the role you're trying to play. You're trying to be a resource to the school community, and I think that's you both are doing a fabulous job at it, and I thank you for all your efforts in it. It's even in the chaotic situations, Gary, it's fun.
The kids are fun.
Kids. I mean, I was at a sporting event, and the kids are coming up to Rich getting the baseball cards, and it's just there's an atmosphere here where kids understand the role of police. They feel comfortable with you, and I think that's a really important thing. So I just thank you, and I also thank Chief Jordan for supporting the program. It's really a valuable thing.
Yeah, thank you both, not only for being here tonight and what you do every day, but for having the interest in that continuing education that's so vital. I think if you were an officer who didn't really care that much and you weren't going to get so much out of it, so that you guys would take time to do that, and it means a lot, and we appreciate it.
Does he have a question for us?
We do.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Can you give me a thumbs up? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And first, I just want to take the opportunity. I apologize I'm not there, and I want to say thank you so much for Gary and Tim to arrange this. I went from being double booked this week and the board being very flexible with the timing of things to having to fly home suddenly. So I'm trying to decide if my life right now is more like a rock star or a Goldberg government agent. So I thank you for your flexibility. I was the one that asked you guys to appear sometime this year, and so please feel free to talk about me behind my back, and I thank you for coming in after hours here. I had some questions about the safety response. If now is not a good time or you can't hear me, please feel free to email me. And I just that like as a parent, as a teacher, and then I had a friend that was killed at Virginia Tech, so I always kind of go from like trying to think logically about this and emotionally. So if I'm straying from my lane, please let me know, okay? Just out of curiosity, does the school use ADD or ALICE for responses?
Ours is ADD, avoid, deny, defend.
Okay, thank you. Is there how do the teachers send in facilities requests if there's like a lock broken or something like that? Is that an email or?
Probably through Dave to answer.
So a lot of the teachers feel comfortable emailing me or approaching me, and if I can't, I like to fix things. It's just something that I do. So I'll go and try to fix it, and I've actually worked with Mr. Riley on making doors close quicker or easier. And so if it's an issue, staff can come to me, they can go to Mr. Pine, and my school will get the information to Mr. Riley as quick as possible. And he's on it like fast. So.
Great.
In my building,
Thank you.
I've never filled out a
I'm sorry.
In my building, we've had some issues with doors not closing tightly, and I don't fill out a form. I get a hold of Devin or Mr. Riley. Our staff, they take care of them immediately, right away. I don't wait for anything. If we need something addressed, they get to it right away.
Okay. Thank you so much. And then at this point, I just need a yes or no answer. Has Newmarket ever had a discussion about reunification center if the school ever has to be evacuated?
Yes.
Okay,
Reunification is
thank
part of
you.
every emergency.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
Any
My
other
pleasure.
questions or comments,
I just have a
thoughts?
question. So when you provide training for the staff, years ago, when my children were young, I worked as a substitute teacher at the elementary school, and I never really knew the protocols, what to do in emergency events. And so, even with the fire drill, like I was never provided that, so that's my biggest concern is when people who just come in for, say, 1 day a week, who don't come in for another 3 weeks, are they getting the same training?
I can say all the staff members who are there on a full-time basis do.
Mhm.
In fact, we've broken it down into 2 parts. Rather than try to do a 3-hour presentation, we've put 2 1.5-hour presentations together for our staff. That's something I can work with Mr. Corman and Mr. Pine as well. I'd be happy to do any kind of like adjunct training, so to speak, for people who are not there routinely. Our schedules, we're there Monday through Friday, so
And I
we'll make
think-
time for them as needed.
That's a fantastic point, and we only know and can prepare for the questions that we come up on our own head. So questions like that are great. So we're able to then, okay, well, this is now an issue that we need to prepare for because it's something that I'd never thought of, and I don't know if Rich has ever thought of that. But how are we going to make sure that these people are prepared to handle any situation that comes forward, right? And it starts with the ADD training, which thankfully is a relatively simple program. Obviously, we don't get into a lot of logistics of security and stuff for the security of the school, but it would be easy to, I think, inform substitute staff members.
Yeah.
And in
Okay.
short, we're also adding, we're researching and developing a flip chart type response. It's gonna go in every emergency go bag in every classroom. That's what
Okay.
our goal is.
Okay.
And one of the things we've spent a lot of time talking about is we've done some of the reviews with, the Homeland Security audits and so forth, is the human element in any security system you have in place, and how do you consistently communicate the right things, and you have to be able to do it in fairly quick ways, and like the idea of the flip charts and things like that, they're easily accessible. It's not going to be reasonable for somebody who's subbing once a month to get a full-blown
Right.
training.
No, but
there needs to be a way
exactly.
that there's they can get the key points in
Right.
the information, so that's a great point.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
I really appreciate it. Thank you, Chief.
Chief, I'm going to give him an A+ for presentation and enunciation, so. All right, maybe you should a little bit. All right, next we're going to move on to presentation curriculum update by Patty Wands. Thank you, Patty. I'd use your title, but it's hard. Hopefully you got a, did you get a Zoom shared link to sign in? Hopefully, okay. No, okay.
I can tell you guys all look very good on camera.
So Andrew may not be able to, you may not be able to see the presentation,
Would it have
Andrew.
gone into email? I
You could
didn't
flip the
pull it
channel 13 if you need to see the presentation. Unfortunately, I don't think they have a Zoom link to,
No.
to share it with you as well, so.
You have to do.
It's okay.
We'll
Yeah,
talk you
it's
through the colors and
this and
words and. Perfect.
All right, that's all I know about that.
You look like an expert, and that's what matters.
Okay, all right, well, good evening, everyone. So I thought I just have a few slides to give you an update from the curriculum office. And the first thing I wanted to share with you was we now have the beginnings to make public our curriculum at the Newmarket School District. And so I have the curriculum page right here. So it should take us to, here's our website. If you go to SAU 31.
That window's not sharing actually, so you may need to unshare,
Oh, I
reshare,
probably have to drag.
or drag
Okay,
to the
let
other
me
one
just do
screen.
this. Hold on.
Go ahead, stop presenting.
No, she's doing screen share, so it's
There
just,
we go. Yeah, I can
have to
just
drag it over, yeah.
drag it over. Okay, so here we are, and I'm going to just
far too familiar with Zoom meetings, unfortunately.
Okay, hold on. I need to hide this so I can activate the website. Let's see. So I want to get the top of the website. Maybe here?
Click on that.
Okay.
There you go, and then just
Here we go. Oh, very interesting. Okay, mine doesn't look like this. Okay. So if I go to SAU 31 and then scroll down to curriculum, we have a new page right here. So I just crafted a little message to let our community know that this is a living document. And what I mean by that, that we are in the very beginning stages of posting our updated curricula to share with our school community. And we're hoping that our parents and community members, they can gain a deeper insight into the learning progressions of all of our students from pre-K to 12. And then I wanted to recognize all of our educators at the Newmarket School District because they work tremendously hard, and I just want to publicly just commend all of their efforts and how they are refining their own documents to support the learning across the district. So I'm just asking folks to come back and revisit, or maybe I'll send an email out through Messenger to say some links have been updated, because we really do look forward to sharing all of the great work that's happening in our classrooms. And so as I scroll over here, I just want to take you, I'm not going to read everything to you, but just show you how it's organized. So if you click on assessment, this page is complete now, and parents can go on, or community members. This is a live link right here that will take you to our New Hampshire Department of Education to explain our New Hampshire SAS assessment that our students take, including our 11th graders for science. And then further below, we have our NWEA assessment and a family toolkit. Again, these are all live links that parents can go to. Oh, I really didn't mean to go there. So I'm going to go back, but here's an example of what it looks like, and parents can click and just get more information to understand. I'm just going to go back. Students are given a RIT score when they complete each assessment, and when they go to the family site, it just explains what does that mean. You know, what is the score? It's trying to share with us what we're looking for, an average typical annual growth of our students from September to June. And then, of course, understanding the scores and how that can relate to college explorations for our high school students as well. And here's information on our state assessment and resources for family. There is a new family portal coming out where families are going to be able to create their portal at the New Hampshire Department of Education and access their assessment results for their child. And then I have information on SATs as well. And then lastly, for our access for our English language learners. And then the NAEP assessment, which is our nation's report card. And I understand Newmarket was selected. It's funny, everywhere I've been as an educator, it's like, oh, we're always selected. You know, and anytime I've been in, like, you were chosen. And so anyways, just information for parents about the NAEP and that assessment as well. So that's the assessment page. And before I go further, I need to recognize Debbie Jankowski, our technology instructional coach, because Debbie, she and I meet with each other often, and both of our brains put together of what this vision of what we wanted the curriculum page to look like for the district. But Debbie is really responsible for I'm giving her the links and the vision, and she's pulling it all together. So this would not happen without Debbie Jankowski. Okay, so under curriculum, this is really what's in progress. We've started links for math, ELA, science, and social studies. Where I'm going with this is we will have a world language link, a music, art, physical education, technology. Our counseling department will also have a link. I think I did everything. A family consumer science as well. So I will have all the links. So for example, if you click on math, it's going to take you to the Common Core State Standards. And then our 2 math programs that are currently being implemented. So if you click on the K-5 bridges, it's for families, and this tremendous resource that is for our families to get on to help their child at home. And if you, I won't take you through everything, but there's just so many things for families under this tab in particular, how they can support their child at home. And then we have the same resource for our 6 through, it's really 6 through 8, and then Algebra 1 and Geometry and Algebra 2 for illustrative math. And if we click on this resource, again, really a host of information for families to really dig into this math resource for our students and how we're preparing them for college and career. I'm going to go back to the curriculum page. Okay, and so again, with science, we have the next gen standards. Now, what will happen is, the vision is for each of these, we'll go pre-K to 12, and we will have documents. I'm going to show you an example of what a UBD document would look like. That's what the teachers are working on that end. And then for social studies, I have included the C3 framework for social studies. So like I said before, we'll be adding in all of our content areas to this page. And then there's a tab for our educator resources, which is very robust here. We also have a professional development site as well, and links for our educators and our master plan, which is expiring in December. So we will put the new one up there once that has been approved. And then lastly, there's a page for parent or guardian resources over here. So here is really where I've really laid out for specific grade level and parent guides for each grade. And then we have high school ELA planning tips for college and career readiness, math, and some at-home activities as well. For, again, all live links. We kept the remote learning platforms and these tutorials up here in the event. Something happened. We thought it's probably just good just to leave up there just in case. And so that's our website. So I'm going to just go back to the PowerPoint. So if I
Should be able to minimize that.
should be able to
Minimize the whole.
probably,
yeah,
right?
Perfect.
Just do that. There we go. Okay. Thank you. You know, you're on somebody else's computer. I'm like, okay.
Like I said, I knew too
There
much
we
about
go.
Zoom
Okay.
meetings.
So the next thing I wanted to share with you, I know a question that was posed when I was here 2 meetings ago. What does that Wednesday look like, the Wednesday structures with the early release of our students? So I just created just this little graphic for you to kind of walk you through the elementary, what their staff are doing, and then the high school. And, you know, credit to the administrators, you know, Sean Pine and Andy and his team at the high school, and Sean and his team, to really fine tune and really use our time wisely, right? To be efficient and effective, and how we look at student data, how does that inform our instructional practices in the classroom? So you can see really breaking down that data review is looking at student data and what are some next steps or plans that we have for students. If you're not a grade 4 and 5 teacher, for example, on that first Wednesday, then you're with your teams and your curriculum planning, your whether that's within your math or you're using your UBD templates to complete those stage 1 developments, or perhaps you're meeting as your grade level and you're sending communications out to parents. So then it just revolves, except for the second meeting, it's a staff meeting, whereas it's a staff meeting for the high school on the 4th Wednesday. But with that lesson share is really staff meetings, really bringing in professional development with the educators that we have, and how do we share what I call the greatness that happens in our classroom to our colleagues. You know, during the day as educators, we're all in our own classrooms. It's like our own little bubble, and we don't get to see what's going on in other classrooms. So the most wonderful thing about holding a staff meeting where you're giving it back to the staff to share that greatness that's going on in the classroom, that, you know, lends itself to a colleague saying, oh, what a great idea. I'm going to touch base with that teacher, or I might even say, can I sit in your classroom and observe that? I love that idea. And that just grows. You know, it grows our own professionalism and our own practices within the classroom, and it leads to culture, positive cultures and climates and collegiality, and that's what we want in all of our schools. So for both elementary and middle high school, to have that same theme running for their staff meetings. Yes, there's that nuts and bolts, but you don't want to take your entire staff meeting. As Andy says sometimes, you know, that can be handled in an email. But like, yet, let's be active during our staff meetings. Oops, and I already went to professional development. I must have hit the computer, sorry about that. And again, you know, I won't read it all to you, but certainly, again, folks are very busy on those Wednesday meetings, all going back to supporting our students. And then this slide is just to kind of give you an idea of what types of professional development, from our district PD days to the 4 earlier release days, some examples of trainings or collaborative work that we are working on as a whole district. I'm going to show you an example in my last slide. What is this UBD, this understanding by design? What does that stage 1 template look like? Because that is the very template that's going to be uploaded onto the curriculum page of the website. So basically it takes you kind of that like 10,000 foot view of what is this teacher covering from September to June. So in that stage 1, you're looking at what the unit is, and I'll show you an example. But that's a lot of the professional development work because it takes time. It takes a lot of time to get those documents complete. And of course our math training, Edmentum is that digital learning tool that actually reads the results of NWEA, and it creates an individual pathway for our students called Exact Path to really hone in on and really address those skills and concepts that they haven't mastered yet as a result of the assessment. And then there are several mandatory trainings and protocols that as educators via the state that we have to complete, and from our district as well. So that's all kind of in there throughout our PD. We're very busy. But my last slide is, I just want to give you an example, and this is an example. So this is what a template stage 1 looks like for understanding by design. And I'm just going to stand over here for a minute. So you're going to have established goals on your left. And that's the understandings that students will need in future school environments or for life beyond a school environment, so career. So when you think of those big ideas or enduring understandings, that's what we refer to them. So an example could be, students will understand that there are multiple ways to solve a problem. That's an enduring understanding that can be applied to anything in life beyond school. What you will also see, depending upon what content area it is, so this says social studies. If I click on this, we're going to see the competencies for the social studies department. And this is as well the New Hampshire state standards for social studies. Click on that, and here are our Common Core state standards. So all of these supporting are the established goal or that enduring understanding. Thinking of that first unit that a teacher's teaching. Now we're going to talk about transferable skills, meaning what are students able to do independently with the learning that they are gaining. So an example would be analytical writing. Maybe it's argumentative writing. Reasoning and computational strategies. We think of in mathematics, there are the 8 mathematical practices. And one of those is being able to articulate your reasoning when you're solving problems. Perseverance as well. The next block here is the meaning block. So we went from transferable skills. What are those skills that they're going to transfer? Now, what is the meaning? So what are the understandings? Students will understand that. So it's specific understandings related to the content that students will have when they complete the unit. So again, students will understand that there are multiple ways to solve a mathematical word problem. You might have, now again, we've got a mix, like I said, this is just a copy that we gave to teachers to help them, so there's math and social studies on here. This is not the same unit, just so you know. So some examples of an essential question, say in a social studies class could be, is the Constitution a living document? What are some major challenges faced by nations? So there are these big, broad, essential questions that are kept on the whiteboard throughout the unit. So when kids ask things why, we'll say, well, let's go back to why are we doing this? We want to find out, is the Constitution a living document? And then the acquisition. What will students know? So for example, this is a social studies one. I'm not going to read to you, but all of the examples of what they will know while teaching this unit. But what do we want kids able to do? So there's the knowing of the content, but then what are they going to be able to do as a result of knowing this? So what are the key skills students will acquire from the lesson, the unit, or the course? So some examples would be identifying the different branches of government, articulating the process of how we pass a bill, explaining how the laws of supply and demand applies to our economy. So this is the stage 1, the big overview of a unit. Stage 2 are the details, the nuts and the bolts, and like the actual, okay, what is this, your lesson planning. So what we say is when I get into stage 2 of the actual details, that's a living document, because I might teach it this year, September of 2022, But next year, September 23, I always, as a teacher, I always wrote notes to myself like, oh, this lesson didn't fly with the kids, or this was not exciting, or the kids didn't understand this, or whatever. And change that for next year so that you know when you were moving into this unit for next year, you're pulling that, you have your notes that you say to yourself, that's right, we were going to do this introduction, or we were going to pull in this novel, or so that's why the stage 2 I wouldn't post on the website, because if I'm a parent, I want to see, all right, my child's in 8th grade social studies, what are they going to be learning this year? And so we want to be able to put these UBD documents, stage 1 development, for quarter 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you can get an overview. Okay, here are the standards that are going to be covered. Oh, here's what my student's going to know, and here's what they'll be able to do at the end. So that's the work, and it's a lot. And so I just give the teachers a lot of credit. And that's it. Thank you for your time. I don't know if there are any questions.
Thank you very much.
I know it was a lot, so I certainly don't.
Could you go back to the previous?
Yeah, and those are just lots of examples. I
know.
just
It's not
want
like
to give you an
one
idea of your
it's
math.
not one follow through.
Yeah.
So, could you? I'm trying to wrap my head around the link between understanding and essential questions.
Okay, so I always like to say that the essential question is, how am I going to motivate? How am I going to get my kids excited about this learning? Because sometimes teachers will hear, I remember one time a science teacher, I think he was doing like force and motion, and his essential question was, why do we have to wear a helmet when we ride a bike? Because kids always ask why. Why do I have to learn this? Why is this important to me? What impact is this going to have in my life? Because we're going to find out why we need to wear a helmet when we ride a bike, so you want to get an essential question that pulls them into the learning. I am engaging the kids, and they're always thinking, they know the why. I'm learning this because as when I go into classrooms and I'll like scooch down and I'll say to kids, tell me what you're doing right now. Oh, Mrs. Wans, we're doing da-da-da. Oh, why? Why are you guys learning this? I want them to be able to tell me, oh, let me tell you why. I know they're with me. I know that they get it. They get why this is important and why we're learning. We've got to be like public with our students, have learning targets on the board so we can go back to it. Yes, we need to have our agendas and what the homework is, but why? Why are we learning this content? Why are we learning this? Why is it important to me as a 6th grader?
So do we have, does the teacher decide the essential question?
Yes. So that's the magic. That's the beauty when the teachers are meeting. They have their standards. They work together to create the units. But, so if I think as an ELA teacher, I had a number of novels as an 8th grade ELA teacher that were available to me. I knew the standards. I met with my department, my fellow ELA 8th grade teachers. We knew the standards that we were teaching. I might teach one novel because I just loved it so much. The teacher across the hall might teach a different novel. That's okay. That's that autonomy piece as classroom teachers that we love about our craft and how we teach, but the standards are the same. That's the commonality piece that's important.
Yeah, and I love the balance between some concept of consistent standards that vertically integrated throughout the system and autonomy, as opposed to teachers not just being handed, here, this is what you have to teach. Right. Is the left column what is centrally sort of hey, here's the competency, the state standards, we have
here's what you need to understand.
Not that left column, I mean the far left, the goals.
Oh, yes.
That is
these standards are driving what we're creating.
So where does the teacher have autonomy and where is the teacher handed something here? I guess I'm trying to get the balance of between how much is
they're coming up with that essential question and then the tools or the resources that they're going to use to teach.
So it's
not
sense. So I'm just looking at the blocks here. What blocks are they sort of all right, here are the desired results. Transferable skill, is that consistent across classroom?
Yeah.
So it's at the understanding essential question space where there's more.
So we want to answer what will students with the knowledge do with the knowledge outside of the context of the classroom or the subject matter includes skill-based competency. So these are your competencies here. Because you want to be thinking, I don't want kids just to remember a list of facts.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I will say, when I was in school, I did a lot of that. I was very good with rote memorization or memorizing rules, to help compute the algorithm, but I didn't really understand the concept. So we're getting away from having kids memorize facts and dates and getting real into having understandings of what is this concept that we're learning, but more importantly, how can we relate this to the world that we live in?
So is it fair to say that the sort of the higher arching thing they're trying to achieve is the established kind of goals that maybe are handed down, sort of, whereas maybe the rest of the form, as I think as I'm understanding it from you, is something that maybe the department uses, or the grade level team uses to create the essential questions and the established kind of goal.
Yes,
and then
exactly.
and then from there the teachers have the independence to say, okay, we're going to use this book to try to answer this essential question. Is that?
Yeah, I'm just like, I'm not like.
So I think that's
I'm
where
not
the
sure if you're
autonomy.
arguing.
I think that's where the
understand
autonomy.
this,
I think
right?
that's where the autonomy
they all
happens.
derive from the competencies you're looking
And the
at.
competencies are handed down from the state, right?
Yeah.
Like in the federal government.
But,
like,
but go ahead.
Not entirely. I mean,
not
certainly
entirely.
the need to have competencies is handed down by the state.
Right.
The standards that you develop them come from the state,
From
but
the
the
state.
competencies are, you can use the more generally developed ones that the state
From the
provides. A lot of schools kind of develop their own using
Yeah.
the standards, and I think that's where
Yes.
you craft it. One of the things I would also say about a document like this is a curriculum, I mean, Patty used the term kind of living document for stage 2. Stage 1 is really about coordination and communication. So
Yeah.
if you can imagine a teacher is looking at this, they're also thinking about what came before it and what comes after it, and it's a way for, like, if this were, say, 7th grade social studies, you would be able to have a 6th grade social studies teacher and an 8th grade social studies teacher look at it, and they would have
Look
a
at that
context of what
Yeah.
their experience was, and it helps them then drive what they do
Exactly.
next. Yeah, I hear what you, but certainly the column on the left is that what drives, like, that's like
That's
state
what's driving,
standards.
yes.
Yeah.
And math is sorry.
Oh, no, you're doing a great job.
You're standing too close. You're standing too close to me. Back up.
It scared me a little.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm the voice from above. If it helps, I could tell you, like, as a teacher, the worst thing is the first time we were teaching a class for the first time.
Yeah.
And it really, I would argue, it takes you 2 years to figure out how to really teach a class.
Yeah.
And with these UBD, and I've had experience with them, it helps out enormously with that learning curve. And then one thing I learned this week is that the thought now is in English classes that students don't all read the same book at the same time. I had growing up in classroom, but instead the big thing is literary circles,
Right.
where they have like 4 or 5 books that students choose from, and then through those 4 or 5 books, the teacher teaches the skills. So there's a lot more direct individual instruction. Student has choice, as what does the teacher, but you're surrounded by those competencies, which I thought was pretty cool, and I wish I had that after I had to slog through some books in high school English. So.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm not critiquing it. I'm just really asking questions to understand.
No, because there's a lot to wrap your head around. I thoroughly understand.
Patty, can I?
Oh, yeah, sure.
At some point, if you feel like you're at a point and you're comfortable with, is there a way you could have a couple of teachers come in and present how they've created UBD and implemented the classroom?
Yes, that's a great idea. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have a lot of teachers who are just at further points than others, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I totally know why I say that too. That's probably going to be a while, and it takes some select teachers that might be comfortable to present to us. So if it doesn't happen right away or it doesn't happen at all, I understand.
Yeah.
So.
Oh no, I think it will definitely happen. I think it's great. Thank you very much.
Can I ask a quick question about the social studies standards?
Sure.
Are we using the New Hampshire ones, Common Core, or C3, or is it yes?
Well, we're really, I think, more leaning more heavily onto the C3 framework, but it could also be a combination as well. So I actually have a meeting with the social studies department head soon.
Now, one of the challenges when you develop your competencies locally is that you can draw from many places.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the pieces we have to kind of come back to.
Yeah.
What is our core standards? And certainly across the region, most schools are working from the C3s.
Yeah.
If I could also just chime in with one other thing, and I just wanted to acknowledge this. one of the things that Patty and I were worried about when we came in as new people starting this year is we didn't want to set the tone with our teachers that we were making them reinvent something. We wanted to validate what they had already done. And so what Patty is doing is actually validating the work to date first before you dive into some of the big steps forward, because one of the biggest fears our teachers have is, okay, we've done all this work the last 2 years, are you going to make us do it differently now? I mean, so we're trying to take the approach of, no, that is not it. We are actually trying to move forward, and so this will be a reflection of a lot of work that's already been
And
done.
really, a lot of the stage one has been done, and I really feel like the teachers in Newmarket need to be, one, validated and celebrated. You know, it's a huge feat to get that work done, and I know many other departments have already moved into the stage 2 development, because that is the exciting part too. But anyway,
Thank you
everybody.
so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
It's a
sure.
great evening.
As you're leaving, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do the essential questions have right or wrong answers, or are they by design?
Oh my gosh. Oh. You know, you could say, what was that? Love. You know, like some of them are really broad. You know, I could think of that in the ELA, mushy, you know, kind of teacher. But yeah, I had some really broad essential questions that can bring about great discussion and dialogue in your classroom where kids can really own what they believe in, you know, and I think that's good. You know, sometimes you want to leave them questioning. I don't know, Lila, if you ever, I'm not putting you on the spot, but, you know, if you've had an experience of having an essential question up there, and maybe there is some disagreement.
All the time, yeah.
Good.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I don't want to keep you any longer, and
Sure.
I'm going to try to push through the rest of the meeting rather quickly since it's getting late, and Todd's been here all day. All right. Again, thank you for that. We've moved up the superintendent contract is now my number one under discussion. It's for 2022-23 year and 23-24 school year. The reason I asked that it be added to the agenda is because, one, Todd and I had a discussion, and we've come up with a preliminary agreement on the contract. And with that, and with the verbal commitment Todd gave us before, and the fact that I think it's, basically it has to do with the term interim. I'm proposing we remove it and we can vote on it later. But I think having the word interim in front of a superintendent kind of doesn't really show the commitment, doesn't really show the school community or indicate to the school community the commitment that Todd's already made. Obviously doesn't indicate the fact that we have a commitment for another year. And I also think it's doesn't appropriately express to us to Todd, or express our appreciation to Todd of his commitment. So basically what I'm trying to say is I'm proposing that we remove the term interim from the 2022-23 contract. I think the term interim can sometimes create a connotation in people's minds that it's temporary and that maybe things are going to change, such as the work that they've already done. And I think it's important we project out to the community and the school community that this work they've already done is not, we're not looking to change all the initiatives that have been started by you. So, does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I would make a motion to that right now if you would allow me to.
I would second it if you would allow me to second it.
I'm going to resist it because we've talked about having public comment before votes, and we made a decision. So I hate to do that because
That's just a statement of my belief.
because I would forfeit as well. But
But to be noted, thank you.
and I think Andrew's indicated he would assist it. But so, yeah, with that, we'll have a vote very soon about that. So great, thank you. Next up, we have public correspondence, and thanks to Todd stealing mine. I have none. Does anyone else have any public correspondence? No? All right, moving right along. We have a Primex Contribution Assurance Program. Basically, it's our insurance company, and they require that the school board be made aware of this agreement. I can pass it on, you folks can look at it. And then I think, do we technically have to vote on this after?
You
I have to sign it, but with the school, I have to attest that the board has been made aware of it, so pass that around. Oh, it's in your agenda. I'm sorry, it's in your
is it the
agenda as
same
well.
one?
Yeah. So you can enjoy reading that while we move on to the next item. Next up, we have the school board goals timeline. Dan mentioned that he had done some work on basically the process of determining legal counsel and whether you want permanent legal counsel and et cetera. So, Dan, do you want to discuss that?
Yeah, the agenda item is overstates it a bit. I mean, this is really just one of the goals that we set as a board was to determine what the legal strategy of the school district should be. And I don't mean with regard to any one particular matter, but just what type of legal representation do we want to have as a school district? What are the considerations? What should the relationship to council look like? Do we want to, you know, for instance, continue on sort of a month-to-month, issue-to-issue basis as we have, or do we want a more structured relationship? So what I tried to put together in draft form for the board to think about and react to is, it just starts with what a timeline might look like for arriving at this decision with, I mean, obviously the way you get things done is to put deadlines and target dates on them. And again, thank you to Gary and Todd, who were my sounding boards for the first draft of this. That was the part of what I'd done that they immediately identified as lacking. So again, I'm not wedded to the dates. I just base them on our calendar for meetings for the rest of the year with sort of a finalization in Q1, because I think it's probably unrealistic to get this done during budget season. But the essential idea would be, you know, it starts with a needs assessment, which I sort of detail out more on the other 2 pages. I'm not going to sit here and read it in consideration of the nice young folks who are now questioning their life choices because this meeting has gone on so long.
Why did we take this class?
Looking for a class.
But
Sorry.
yeah, we apologize.
You picked the wrong meeting.
Thank you for putting up with us. We really we apologize, but
Democracy in action is painful.
and I do want to make clear that needs assessment is beyond just the 5 of us. I mean, Jana is going to have need for legal counsel in various matters. Erica is going to have need for legal counsel. Todd is going to have need. The building administrators. You know, it's a bigger discussion than just us to really prioritize what the needs are. And on the second page, I just tried to break it down into various legal disciplines and how important do we think each one is, because it's unlikely we're going to find a single firm that can do all of this in a single package. Bond counsel in particular, I've been told by people I've talked to, is a very niche area. There's really one firm in the state that does bond counsel. Once we have that, I'm recommending, if the board agrees, that we do this as sort of a survey. It would go to the 5 of us, it would go to Jana, it would go to Erica, it would go to probably Jason. You know, technology does have some needs for legal representation, probably to the building administrators. But once we sort of collect everybody's weightings on these different areas, you know, the SAU comes, the administration sort of presents that back to us. Collectively, here's what the royal we thinks is most important. And then we have a discussion among the board and the superintendent about the second page of what I put, which is, yeah, I doubt intuitively it would make sense to go down the road of in-house counsel, but I did want to put it on here just in the spirit of being, you know, collectively exhaustive. But then in the alternative, if we don't go down the road of in-house counsel, what sort of relationship do we want? Do we want an on-demand? Do we want a retainer? Do we want to sole source this to a single firm? Or do we want to kind of divvy it up by areas of expertise? You know, that sort of structure that discussion would really probably take us through the end of this month. In October, hopefully we'd be in a position to, based on everybody's survey responses, to approve a rubric of, you know, if we go out and do a solicitation, like an ROI, not ROI is the wrong term, RFI type solicitation for legal counsel, what rubric would we use to evaluate the responses? At that point, we probably I'd propose we do an RFI, send it out to firms that do municipal representation in the state, get those responses back, probably have some individual conversations with the superintendent, with board members, with representatives of the firms who would respond to that to get a measure of comfort that it's something viable. And then, again, shoot to make a decision probably sometime in Q1 as to what the official strategy that we adopt as a board is going to be.
This is fantastic, Dan. Obviously, a ton of work. I guess I'd make one suggestion on the process, and that is that maybe we send this areas of legal service form out itself to see how comprehensive it is for the needs of the people and those key stakeholders.
Yeah.
So they may add areas that we would then want to send out in a survey.
Oh, absolutely.
So we may just want to add that. But other than that, I think it's a fantastic
Yeah,
process.
I super appreciate the rigor. I guess the other thing that I might potentially suggest, and it's really easy to be a Monday morning quarterback, just the target completion dates, some of these things look they probably align closer to meetings. Like 9:20, like 9:29. Like we're actually not going to meet after this until 10:06, right?
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, so like discussions should probably So
Yeah,
I'd
I'll go
say
back.
It does
I'll go
feel a
back
little.
and-
It feels a little aggressive to me.
Yeah,
I have to admit, but yeah.
It might be.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll certainly go back and double check the meeting calendar to maybe I got it wrong when I did this.
well, I think we were
Not
talking
a
about
ton,
that pad
but-
time too.
Yeah.
Probably we're
Yeah.
going to send,
Yeah.
which looks like a pretty comprehensive area legal service need, but like we're not the operators on the ground.
Right, yeah, and I mean, there's things I put on here, again, just trying to be comprehensive.
Lobbying?
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah,
Probably
right.
not something that
Who
we're
knows,
gonna have
right?
a lot of need for, but hey, it is
Yeah.
a service that law firms provide, so.
Absolutely. I think it's great.
I do like the desired relationship to council. Like I know you put illustrative in-house versus outside, but like there's various relationships with outside we could get into.
Yeah.
That I think that deserves robust discussion.
Yes, I mean, all of it, I think, you think of putting things on a continuum. Most of them, to some greater or lesser extent, kind of boil down to accessibility versus cost.
Yeah.
The more you're willing to pay, the more people are going to ask
Yeah.
how high when you say jump.
Yeah.
So
Just just for the sake of time, I'm going to suggest that we discuss that more robustly at a different meeting. But would you feel comfortable working with Dan to send this out to the key stakeholders to see if there's any additional legal services areas we need, and then we can do the next steps from there? Awesome. Thank you so much. Anyone else have any thoughts on that? Sorry, I know I'm being a bit pushy, but I turn into a pumpkin at 7 o'clock. And get close.
Please do push.
I go to bed at 7:05, so that might be embarrassing. Speaking of pushing people, budget goals are our next discussion item. And when I say pushing people, this is something we historically have done, or at least in the long 2 years I've been on the school board. But normally we don't really talk about a goal per se in a financial or a finite kind of number. Todd's indicated that it's much easier for them to say, oh, we want to keep it under a 5% increase or a 10% increase or a 1% increase or whatever. So and they kind of need that tonight to get really going on proposing budgets if possible.
I think it would be helpful to at least frame the question for us as we begin to, I don't expect you tonight to set a budget goal by any means, but it would be helpful to just kind of discuss what it is, because we're going to discuss the budget timeline here in a little bit, and there's some very key things that are going to come up here in about 3 weeks, and including the board workshop, and just as much detail as you can give us for what you're thinking, we can build a budget to that. We can also build scenarios, but just to kind of begin at that point, because I and my team can build a budget to do just about anything. It's just the more guidance you can give us as we're starting this process and inputting things, the more refined we can be when we start this process. So again, not pushing you to say you have to
Yeah.
have a specific goal, but it would be just some conversation about it would be helpful for Janet and I and Patty to hear.
I will say, Todd and I have done some wild guesses as to next year's flat level increase, and we're estimating somewhere between 500,000 to $1 million. So, assuming $1 increase in the tax rate, if that's the avenue you want to look at, is in the comprehensive hit to the tax rate, you can assume we're going to have a flat dollar anyways. If you want to look at it in terms of, which I can figure out the percentage, I don't think I know off the top of my head. If you want to look at it in terms of, I think, whether our goal is to reopen the school and ensure that we recover as much pandemic loss as possible, and we're not concerned with the budget, we can frame it that way, and I think that probably would work somewhat. Does anyone have any thoughts on, throw out a number? No.
Now I know there's the default budget, but if we just had like our contractual increases and kind of like what we need to do to open the schools and have them function well, do you have an idea what percent that would be?
Well, I think that was sort of the number that, again, this is a very rough estimate, but if we just wanted to keep things like as is, assuming, again, increases in fuel costs and all those things are gonna just happen no matter what we do. Gary and I, again, this is definitely on the back of a napkin kind of calculation. That was where we came up with the 5 to 700,000 probably is like, a starting point. So yeah, so if you're looking for like no changes, nothing increased, you're probably looking at a $500,000 anyway.
So that's 4%.
4%, you're saying?
Well, a million divided by 25 million.
$1 million, he said 500,000.
Well,
We need
I-
500 to $1 million.
500
Yeah,
500
we
million.
need a huge
Worst
range.
case scenario, you go with $1 million. I'm being conservative because
That's 4%.
that's 4%. So 2 to 4%.
And next year is the year where we're really gonna have to look at the positions that we created with the grants, is that correct?
The grants, our funding goes through 23, 24, so yeah, it would be for the 24, 25 would be the first time we'd have to be confronting the question of what do we do with some of these grant-funded positions?
Okay, so wouldn't it be this budget, but this next one?
No, but I think we would do ourselves some favors to begin posturing for that, so it's, I mean, as we talked about before, you want to try to minimize spikes, and to the extent we can make adjustments this year, particularly knowing we have things like a para-contract and things of that sort, the more we think that way, this year it prepares us for the following year.
And the parent contract total wild assumptions is included in that very broad range that we've given of 2 to 4%.
Let me make sure I understand the math right. So when you're talking $500,000 to $1 million, that's on the spend side only. That doesn't even make any assumptions about things like state and federal revenue or.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Just looking at total budget. Yeah.
All right, so that's looking at spend.
Yeah.
Then what we believe, based on what Jana told us, what we believe we know about the revenue side is that the offsetting amount from return of fund balance is going to go from 1.5 to 1. So
Well, no, that's
This year.
that's this
oh,
year.
okay, sorry, you're right. So we don't know for next year
No,
what
I-
return of fund balance.
No, and next year's budget's been done. This is the year after
Yeah,
budget, which is hard to think about. But
yeah, very. All right.
I mean, so personally, obviously, I want at least level, right? I don't think we want to lose positions. I don't think we can afford to. I don't think we can really increase class sizes dramatically, offer very many less activities. I don't think we're doing a whole heck of a lot of extra fluff stuff. I certainly think the pandemic loss is a huge issue. Obviously, accreditation is a huge issue. So, I'm leaning towards at least some increase off flat. I don't know whether we want them to see what that would be to kind of make sure we don't lose loss or we recover from the pandemic as much as we can, and we offer the support emotionally that students have had, assuming they still have it in 2 years, right, from the pandemic.
Here's the only counterpoint I'm thinking of, and don't take this as something I'm advocating for, it's just what's in my head.
Yeah.
3 consecutive years we've been unable to staff to the level that we budgeted.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, it would be a good problem to have if we could staff to the level we budget, but the reality has been that we've not been able to. Do we really envision that changing for the 23-24 school year?
Let's assume we couldn't fund 10 pairs. I'm trying to estimate. You're talking $300,000-$400,000.
30
Yeah.
to 35,000.
I mean, you're right. It doesn't fix the problem, but
Yeah.
that's the only thing that's in the back of my head is
You make the assumption we're not going to be able to
we
fill
keep
those.
rolling $1 million over year after year after year. Why do we do that? For a number of reasons.
But only
that's one
only
of
because
them.
of the pandemic, right?
Mhm.
And because we couldn't. I mean, previously you're right. We've had 6 positions we haven't filled since we don't know when. So
Yep.
if you want to go with 6 as a base or 5,
Yeah,
5 times
you'd have to
30-ish, yeah.
pick what you think is the
Yeah,
right number.
yeah.
But and I'm not saying again you aim to knock it down by that amount, but at least you somewhat offset what
Sure,
you think you
yeah.
want to increase in the areas that we do have confidence we can staff to it.
yeah, I think that's putting Todd in a tough spot without having the opportunity to talk to his staff and say, is it okay? Can we really give all the services we need?
We're not asking him
We-
that question tonight.
Yeah, no,
No,
we're not.
no, we're not.
We're-
But my point is like, so to assume that, I don't know if it's, we can do that. He's not gonna be able to give us a good answer as to,
I'm not going to give you a good answer
Well, no,
tonight,
but-
but I could,
Yeah.
I could say that
Yeah.
I do think one of the things we should do, because there has been a lot of pandemic-related anomalies over the last couple of years, and I think we can take a look. In fact, Jenna and I were just talking earlier today about we need to do a look back of what the pre-pandemic looked like and start doing some comparisons. I do think there are enough anomalies that those we may be able to put those together and find some savings there, whether it is in some staffing positions that we finally say we haven't been able to fill for 6 years. Why would we think that was going to change for next year? So do we budget for that? So there's room for those kind of conversations, and I don't want anyone to think that we're thinking that we have to cut anything. I'm just saying we've had 2-3 very unusual budgeted years, and hopefully we're getting to a point where normalcy takes over again. Of course, then you throw in inflation being what it is. But I think there's an opportunity to take a closer look at budget lines and just ask some questions that don't have to have a negative impact on our product. It's time to make an adjustment because we haven't spent it in multiple years, which is part of why we're having $1 million or $1.5 million unexpended fund balance.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I see where Dan is coming from with it. I'm not a fan of just the concept of what percent are you willing to take increase, because
Yeah.
like 2 things. 1, it just assumes everything always increases. 2, it doesn't encourage the kind of thinking that Todd just actually went through, which is like, okay, we got this much increase, we're going to put the increase. It's also like, okay, how we reallocate according to the needs of the world today, which gets to my final point. I think it's hard to understand what the needs of the world today are today. I think it's going to take us a while to sort of suss out, like, what does post-COVID
And these
world
are the
look
needs
like?
for 2 years from now.
Right.
Which is
Which
even harder.
Right, I know,
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
sort of the budget cycle. That I'm disinclined to be like, we should have major shifts up or down with our recent history being such an anomaly that we can't really build any trend data out of, that it feels to me that there might be some things where it's just like, look, pre-pandemic, during pandemic, these things were things that just we weren't able to do, and we don't think it's going to be that, whatever. But to make fundamental seismic shifts feels, this wouldn't be the time to be, this feels like the time to do the vision of a graduate, do some zero-based budgeting on what would it take. It could look very different, right? Like what the structures look like to support that. And that should be the time for any sort of like potential like rock, like, you know, earthquake, not earthquake, I won't say that, road tax rate, people start showing on an email. Adjustments to what the funding looks like in like some like fundamental way, I should say.
So maybe we should think about saying we want to try to keep it flat, but if there's any specific areas you've learned through talking to your administration that requires an increase in order to be successful at educating kids to the level we've done it, we should discuss it at that point.
Can I pause it one more thing? I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's what we're here for.
That I know
I mean,
I'm the
you have 2
talker. I'm
minutes,
the one
but
that
it's
keeps
over
us
here.
here late. I'm starting to think the CIP is my fault.
No, that's been that way since long before you.
The the social emotional health thing, like a point really well taken. Maybe we look at like, hey, what's it look like based like 0 increase, or like based on what you understand the needs of the population to be, you and your team, but like these are things that we would want to look at potentially like adding to help certain like components of like we need more social emotional or whatever, right? Things that we like don't know up here. And like maybe there's potential offsets or maybe there's not. But like I think that like looking at like a 0 and a something, not really 0 is.
Yeah, and I think you kind of have to, for the sake of discussion, assume the social and emotional issues and the pandemic deficit is still there to be conservative with a number, right? Because we don't want to assume it's gone and everybody's emotionally fine in 2 years.
Yeah, but I guess okay.
You know,
So,
you know what I'm saying?
I guess I would to see that. I would be like, okay, well, what operationally are we doing, and what is the budget tied to it? Not just
Sure.
like we
Oh,
can
yeah.
spend more money on this. 'Cause
No,
we
no,
know this
absolutely.
problem, Like, what
Yeah.
are the operational?
But I'm saying for them, they kind of have to make the assumption, okay, we're going to have kids that still have social emotional problems based off pandemic or just craziness of life at the same level we have now. So what would that mean?
I think we would have to know as they're doing the work what assumptions they're baking into their to build budgets off of.
Sure.
So what I'm hearing you say, and it makes perfect sense to me, that we're kind of doing you use the term needs-based budget. We review everything with the idea of what our needs are. If we have specific new needs, we'll bring those forward and we'll talk about them individually, but the idea is we're gonna try to you use the term 0, but when you say
Yeah,
0,
it's not
you
the-
mean that 2 to 4%.
Yeah.
Contractually
Right.
applied, okay.
Basically,
Yeah,
no
basically.
no additional programs, because, 0 would be dramatic.
Oh, gosh, no.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, so you're saying like
Level.
in that idea of 2 to 4% is what you're saying, with the idea that we have done sort of a very careful look through everything, determine what our needs are, and are prepared to offer defenses for anything that is additionally determined as a need to support any of the initiatives. Is that an accurate assessment of kind of where you guys are at?
I would say so.
Yeah.
Sounds fair to me.
And I mean, I will say, I shouldn't, but Mike, not that I shouldn't, but it's a calculus we need to make or realize is that you're talking probably $200 per $400,000 house increase, if level making the assumptions that we made. So.
Yeah, but I mean, that's, in fairness, that's nothing new. That
Oh, no,
that
not at all.
happens,
Yeah.
you know.
Oh no, not at all. It's just,
I mean,
and I
the-
don't think we
the
should base
teacher
our
contract
decisions
all
off
by
of it.
itself
Yeah, I don't think we should base our decisions
Yeah.
off it, but at the end of when the rubber meets the road, that's where.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I have.
Does that work?
Yep, that will certainly assist us as we.
Well, that was easy. All right, now the tough one, budget workshop dates.
Yeah, good luck
Really,
with that.
Get your calendars.
So
Oh, I'm
basically,
sorry, go ahead.
Really, the key week, there's a week of October 11th through the 14th is when we have budget workshops for the board, and we're hoping that you could have a conversation night so we could pin that date down, because, and I'll have to defer to you. I don't know traditionally how you structured your budget workshops. I'm used to having like a half day or something where you have all of your department heads and administrators come and present to the board.
So you're thinking during the
But
week,
again-
I assume?
Yes, but I'm more posing the question to you
Sure.
in terms of, is that what you have done in the past? Because I honestly
Well,
don't know.
again,
what
in my
you-
long history of service, during pandemics, I don't recall us having. We had, I guess, the two
Yeah.
principals came in and
Yeah,
gave us
yeah.
a discussion about their thoughts on where the increases were. But
Because in the conversation you and I had, I think you were looking for more of a granular sort of.
oh, that was the other thing. Thank you very much. That was the other thing we need to talk about. Yeah.
So, in order to do that, I think the best thing would be to have have the individual department heads be here to talk to you and answer any individual questions you might have.
Yeah.
Because I think, if you're depending on me to answer everything, you'll get a more general answer. Obviously, Jen is going to have a more specific answer, and then.
Yeah. So let's back up then slightly. I guess using Jana's financial statement as a guide, an indicator, are we more comfortable having kind of a summary paragraph-based report to say this is our proposed budget and this is why we want to increase, and I'm trying to think busing went down and the arts went up because of whatever, just in general statements, or are we more interested in kind of a very detailed line item?
I like the summaries.
Yes.
Well,
I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair to Janet to do both. I would
I
want
don't think
both.
Janet should do, but I would want to see, like building the principals in here, like I would
Yeah.
like to
Yeah.
see like the leaders of departments. in
Oh, no,
here
no,
bringing
but
their
they
budget.
would be, she'd be part of the crew that created the document, right? So, and she's gonna be the one that brings it all together and spends all the late nights. So, I don't think we should ask her to do both. I personally prefer a very line item detailed, this is what we did the last year, so we did the year before, this is what we spent this year.
Yeah.
But I know other people have enjoyed the summative sort of.
Yeah.
I don't see why they're mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I don't either.
Janet, would you mind just real quick? Because again, you were here for the previous budget cycle, although microphone's over there, that's right. So really, we're talking about sort of two ways of presenting information. One is
Right.
more of the summary style that we appeared to
Yep.
have had last year versus a more line item. How complicated it would be to do both? What is your thought?
So I kind of agree with what Dan said. They're not mutually exclusive.
That was
I'm sorry.
All right.
Sorry.
We agreed on that.
Okay. What I would say is, however you boil the information down, you're looking at the bottom line number, right? And really, the way that we present it to you folks is just a matter of slicing that pie in different ways. So, one thing that I would discourage the board from doing, it's your purview, but when we start talking about specific line items like what goes into counseling supplies and things like that, it's very easy to spend a whole lot of time and go down the rabbit hole about those things, because when you look at a 100-page budget, like we know that supplies actually are found in all the function codes, right? But when you look at something and you say, well, why is that up 600? Well, maybe last year we purchased it out of general ed. Doesn't mean we're changing it or we're increasing it. So we certainly we can and are glad to provide it to you that way. But I do think that over the past few years, one of the things that Susan did start with this district, which I think has resonated really well with the budget committee, with the community, and with the board, is we do the analysis for you. So the information's available, but we can still break that down in a way that's meaningful for you. When we report it to the DOE, it's in the Department of Ed, it's in function code. But to the layperson, what exactly is other curricular? Nobody really knows what that means, like we do. But so that's why she had started looking at those broader buckets, salaries and benefits. Everybody gets that. Supplies, textbooks, transportation, like all of those kinds of service things people get. So my recommendation is, we certainly can provide you with all of the information we want. And when we go through the budgets in the district, we go through line by line by line. But that's mind-numbing, I think, for you and for the public to look at all of those things. So
I appreciate that. But personally, not that I don't like your summatives, your style, your summary. They're great. But for me, to be able to comfortably go to a taxpayer and say, yeah, I know what's in the budget, I've looked at it. No, I don't think we should go through each line item as a board and say,
Right.
well, why did you increase this $50?
Right.
Why did this go up 600%? We need to be intelligent about the questions we answer and only significant changes, I think. But for me, I don't feel comfortable being able to say to the taxpayer, hey, I know exactly what's in this budget and why it costs $25 million. But that's just me.
Well, I think it should be easy then. Provide both, because I would feel more comfortable with the summary. I'm not an accountant, line by line. I'm not going to lie, it's not going to be as beneficial to me. And I remember reading those
older reports. And they don't make sense
Yeah.
if you get lost in them, I
Yeah,
think. Sometimes.
I think we can find a balance.
Yeah, I
We
think-
can provide both.
yeah.
Right.
Everyone has a
Summary-
different way of learning
Yeah, so I can
and
think I can
understanding,
envision
so.
having the general summaries like have been done in recent years, which I think are exceptional. I think they give you a sort of the layperson's view of the budget with like as you described, the buckets of where the cost centers are, but then we can also give the board the line item detail with the understanding that if we go through every line and discuss.
It will take a
individual
very,
points
very
at
long
The rest of our
individual
lives,
level.
yeah.
We need to schedule 5 days worth of budget workshops to do it.
Right.
But I think that can be provided, and then I think at the budget workshop, we can have each of the department heads just kind of give you the
Right.
overview, and then you can say, okay, here's, I wanted to ask you about this line,
Yeah.
and that's fine, as long as it's not every line.
Right.
And if we have,
that's-
we should provide the questions up front if we can to say, hey,
Yeah.
Absolutely, that's very
Not-
much
not
appreciated, and
waste
that's,
time.
that was my point,
Yeah.
like, just, certainly we want
Absolutely.
to explain and be clear about any
Yep.
questions you have about how we arrive at the numbers, but sometimes it's just counterintuitive, as to Amy's point, when you start looking at it, you just get lost in the budget, because it's just pages after the same numbers and the same numbers, it's
I'm a
just.
number geeks too, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've got no interest in seeing it down to the GL code. That
Right.
really is not what I'm driving at. In every budget I've ever looked at for the town or the school district, there are just certain lines that jump off the page, because this is 200% of, and again, if it was $50 last year and 150 this year, it's not that I don't care, but I'm not going to focus on that like something that was, $75,000 last year and now it's 25,000.
Yeah.
So and this is, unless they've changed things considerably, this is probably the way the budget committee's going to look at it too. Big deltas jump off the page.
Right.
So if the department heads can just come in prepared to talk to things that are going to be eye-grabbing off the
Okay.
page, that's, I think, the best way to do this.
I mean, if you guys feel comfortable, you can do both formats and not create a lot of extra work. I mean, I don't want to say any extra work, because I would hate to do, but, well, I don't want anyone here spending the whole night
Right.
here because I asked
Well,
for.
I guess I'm envisioning some report close to what Jenna and I will use to go through department budgets.
Right,
And-
well,
and
that-
we can give that to you with a similar report to what's been done in the past, which is the more broad cost
Right,
centers.
so the what Todd's referring to is, when I run the full budget by GL line, it's a big whopping report, but when I meet with, for example, Sean Pine, I only run the lines that pertain to elementary. So that would be the granular detail of the elementary. So we can certainly, and that's what all of our department heads are working from right now as they prepare the next budget. So we certainly can give you that line item detail that supports those bigger numbers, that will be like akin to what you have in front of you in my report tonight. We have those bigger buckets, and we present it in a kind of a statement, and then we give you a description of variances up and down in those larger areas. But there's nothing to hide in the detail. Like I said, the bottom line number, it ties right out to what comes out of our budget. It's all the same numbers, just a way of slicing the pie.
Great, thank you.
I mean, the things that always end up drawing the most questions are when we reclass something. We change, we used to
Absolutely.
book this cost
Yeah.
here, now we're doing it there.
Yep.
And,
Yeah.
Or something fundamentally just costs a lot more all of a sudden one year,
Yeah.
and you're like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like
right,
oil.
Like those, right.
you know.
Yeah, exactly.
And you will see some of that this year because of, the professional services piece and the propane and the electric and frankly, water and sewer in town, those kinds of things.
That town.
Sean.
So if we call that out in the text that accompanies the tables, it'll just, you won't end up in the situation that
Down
Russ
the road.
Simon always used to talk about, playing Where's Waldo.
Yeah, yeah,
That's when that's when the meetings get long.
yeah.
Great, thank you so
So-
much. All right, so
Right,
I think we've beaten that. So now we're back to October 11th
But
to
the week of
14th.
that week. was the
October
week-
11th is the only conflict I have that week. I'm going to be in Boston that night, but the rest of it I'm open.
I cannot do the 13th at State Board of Ed.
And I
Unless you're
have
thinking
lost the
about doing
calendar.
it.
Yeah, I would hate to do evening. So we have the 12th and 14th as possibles. Is that what I'm hearing?
I do want to make you aware, even though we put this together as a group, that date, I'm out of the country that week, that 11th through the 14th.
Feels like.
Should we
Yeah.
be going with you?
Yeah.
And where are you
Um,
going? No.
Yeah, I mean, the 11th I'll be
important
here.
Mm-hmm.
The 10th I'll be here, but the 11th through the 14th I'm gone. But we, I can certainly front load it and prevent it.
So we need to move a week forward then? Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't,
Or is that not possible?
yeah, it has to be that week or a week later. So I guess I would prefer to, what day did you say you would be here, Jana?
The 10th?
I get
Or
the 15th is a Saturday. I come back in that day, and so the following Monday,
17th.
17th.
I could make that work.
Would that, would the Monday, October?
So we're talking noonish or something,
Yeah.
2 to 4, sort of.
Yeah. Block
This
out.
is November?
October 17th.
October 17th.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough for you, man. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. You do have that day job. Well, I have a day job too, but
We all
it's
have
easier
day
for me. It's easier for me to put in PTO than it is for. Do you need a note for school, Andrew? We can.
We could split the difference and do it like later, like 2 to 5, like a 3. Do you think? What do you think? 3 hours to? How many hours do you think we need to go through all the budget centers? You know.
I think it just depends on then how deep we go in the detail. I mean, we could spend, you know, when we presented last year, it was kind of the whole budget format. We had the narrative, and you may remember what that looked like. That was about a 2-hour thing, and every department head kind of got up and spoke.
But we could do it like 2 o'clock in the afternoon to whenever we finish, and that way it would split the difference with Andrew, so he's not having to leave an entire afternoon. You know, he's a teacher.
I would probably have to be
students
out
matter.
by 5.
Okay, so we now have some constraints.
So just so we're looking at 2 o'clock on the 17th of October?
Well, I was proposing that because I was assuming you would be concerned about getting out of school, because that's a school day, correct? So I know you're a teacher, and that would be a hardship, so I was suggesting splitting the difference and starting later in the afternoon to give you but if that's not good for you.
I'd really appreciate that.
It does create an issue with Bill and the
Yeah,
other
we're
end.
gonna leave at 5 on that
Yeah,
Monday.
so.
So I'll say I can't take a half day anymore, so it's all or nothing for me. So, like I couldn't be there until 4 at the earliest. So like if it's, I have personal needs for this reason. So, if we want to do it that day, I can do it earlier and just take a day off. So.
Well, Phil
I
can't
do his
stay
best.
till after 5.
Well, then
Yeah,
we
so
could
start at
You
12.
can take the day off.
Oh, he's
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah,
take
we
the
can
day
start
off,
in
he
April.
said.
So you could take the day off on the 17th then? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that's what's better for all of you guys.
Then
I mean, the alternative would be a weekend, right? So you didn't have to take it off.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't really want them coming on a weekend if possible. I will buy everyone pizza that day. How's that?
All right.
Pizza.
So we said noon on what did you
Yeah,
say?
say we
Noon.
just said noon, yeah.
The
So-
cheapest pizza I
So
can find.
noon to 4 with the optimistic hope of being done before then?
I would,
I'm
I
putting
would,
on my
good.
calendar till 5.
I would say
Yeah,
till
me too.
5, just, and then hopefully we get
Okay,
done
fine,
much
noon to
earlier.
5. You got it. Okay, so that was decided, and the other dates are actually more subject to, school board agenda, like November 3rd is the November board meeting, and would we want to make that meeting a budget workshop depending on, and we can talk about that later on.
Yeah, actually
Decide
last,
that right now.
we've done workshops during the meetings the last couple of times anyways, right? So, yeah.
Okay. I think you beat that horse.
Okay.
Thoroughly.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, I have 3 different calendars I need to update. Thank you very much. All right, awesome. Now open the floor to public comment at 7:16. No one's rushed down here. And these good folks are not here for public comments, so seeing no one will close the floor at 7:16.
Seriously, if you need to get home, we'll put in the good word with your
Yeah.
teachers that you put in.
You're not on camera at all, so
Look, this guy has pull right
Yeah.
here.
feel free to duck out. You've done more than enough, yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much. And the rest of the gallery should please go home. Please, please,
Go.
please go
Probably
home.
vote so they can go home.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
everybody go home. All right, we're gonna do the second reading. Actually, the first item of the agenda was, where's that? Nope, never mind. All right, so do the second reading and approval of policies GBEAA, GFA, GFA-R, GICC, GICC-R. Does anyone want to talk about those? Have everyone reviewed them as much as they care to? All right.
For the record, we did not have a GBCAA, and that is pretty much that's the adjustment there, and that's new. That would be a new policy for us. The residency one really has not changed. It was recommended as a first read in 2019 and never actually brought for a second read. And the JICCR, we just simply simplified the bus rules, so that's what's different.
Perfect. All right, I'd seek a motion to accept the policies as previously listed. I'm not going to say it again.
So moved.
I'll second.
You're gonna hate me.
No, please. That's what we're here for.
So JICC, there's that language of under the control and submit to the authority of the bus drivers.
Still, I thought we should use that.
All right.
Can we make a?
I'm going
make that
to amend my.
Friendly amendment.
I'm going
Move it on
to.
second read and we'll just fix
Yeah.
it. My apologies.
I'm going to amend my motion to remove with JICC
Yeah.
and JICCR.
You can leave R, but
Okay. Oh, so just remove JICC then.
Okay.
Patty's going to kill us. Any further discussion?
No.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thank you. I'm just going to do this myself. I move we approve the manifest of September 15th, 2022 for $511,000, $511,009.75. Can I get a second? Phil? Thank you very much. Discussion. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Andrew?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, I wasn't looking at the screen.
No, I'm glad you brought it up.
Make a motion to, or I'd seek a motion to revise the superintendent's contract to remove the title interim
So
for the
moved.
2022-23.
Second.
Any discussion?
Todd, I just want to tell you how excited I am here for the future, and I just want to thank your family too for letting you out of retirement to step up to the plate, and please keep them
wife doesn't
as your
listen.
first priority, but thank you.
I appreciate that. I'll tell my wife Lisa when
I'll
I get home.
second that too.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Congratulations, Superintendent Allen.
Thank you.
Your new title. Seek a motion to approve the capital projects presented, namely the playground and the school courtyard. Thank you very much.
So moved.
Second.
She got
Hey,
me.
Amy.
She got me.
All right. All in favor, say aye. Any discussion?
Aye.
I
Aye.
apologize. Any discussion? My fault, sorry. Motion
Like,
passes
no
5-0.
discussion.
We are done.
Oh,
All right, make a motion to approve or acknowledge that I don't know why it's even on there. We don't need to approve it. I just need to sign it,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
Speaking of which, do I have that back?
is that right there?
Did everybody else see?
yeah, you-
Oh, yeah, that's right.
we
You're
have
right.
it
You're
in
right.
our
You're right.
packet.
You're right. You're right. All right, next up, we have some personnel matters.
Yes, so, real quick here, we have, two new hires. In fact, Nathaniel Doust, some of you may remember, he actually worked in this district up until 2020. He is coming back to us as a reading continuity specialist. That's one of those grant positions that we have, that were created through the ESSER funds. So in fact, pending approval tonight, he's planning to work tomorrow, so that's
Wow.
very exciting. And then Stephanie Rattan, we actually hired her a while back, and she is the reading tutor at the elementary school. So,
All right, I seek a motion to accept the employee nominations as presented.
Second.
Second, Phil. Dan, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Awesome, thank you very much. Reminder, the next school board meeting is October 6th, 5 p.m. here. And with that, we will seek a motion to go into non-public discussion to discuss items provided by council and the hiring of a person as a public employee, I believe.
So moved.
Second.
RSA 91A3, what is that?
91A3,
B and L.
B and L, thank you, sorry about that. I was trying to underline them and I didn't say that.
Oh, so it's just being,
B and L,
I think it's
you know,
yeah,
okay. I look at it.
it's a contract we're discussing for somebody, a new guy for next year.
So moved.
Second.
Phil, Thank you very much, Lila. Have a great
Thank you,
night.
Lila.
Apologies for all the discussion.
Oh no, I enjoyed every minute of it.
Wow.
You're such a good liar. I like that.
Wow.
Actor.
Did she do that? All right. By roll call vote, Andrew, we're going to have to hang up and call you back after, but by roll call vote, Gary Swanson, aye. Amy Tilton? Andrew Hemaker?
Aye.
Phil Nazaro? Aye. Dan Smith?
Aye.
All right, we are in non-public. You tell Channel 13.
Gary, how is this